with a couple of closed session items, and we'll now reconvene in open session. And I believe we have some motions rising from closed session. And Madam Deputy Clerk, if you want to put the first one on the screen, that'd be great. Madam Assistant Clerk. This committee recommends the Council that confidential report HR 21-1 dated January 27th, 2021 from the Union Negotiations Working Group regarding an update on negotiations with the IBEW Environment and Infrastructure Services Department Employee Bargaining Group be received as information. Is there a mover and a seconder to put this on the floor? Thank you, David, and thank you, Mason. And is there any further discussion on that motion? I will call the question. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. With respect to our second item, I will now ask staff to do exactly what well done, Radar. That this committee recommends the Council that is recommended in the confidential report SEL 21-01 dated January 22nd, 2021 from the Boards and Committees Selection Panel, Carol Perot, be appointed to the Accessibility Advisory Committee for a 3-year term to expire November 14th, 2023. That in accordance with Chapter 493 of the City of Orillia Municipal Code remuneration, Jefferson Robbins, appointee to the Active Transportation Committee, be deemed to have resigned. And the following new members be appointed for a 3-year term to expire November 14th, 2023. Sharon McKinnon to the Active Transportation Committee, Kronislav Murinich to the Active Transportation Committee, Lori Neal as vendor representative to the Farmers Market Advisory Committee, John Bell to the Municipal Heritage Committee, Paul Raymond to the Municipal Heritage Committee, and that Richard Rugg be appointed to the Environmental Advisory Committee to replace Tyler Hunt, who has resigned for the remainder of the 4-year term to expire November 14th, 2022. And that Megan Edwards be appointed to the Orillia Public Library Board to replace Karen Hewitt, who has resigned for the remainder of the 4-year term to expire November 14th, 2022 as well. And that James Caldwell be appointed to the Recreation Advisory Committee to replace Michael Underhill, who has been deemed resigned for the remainder of the 3-year term to expire November 14th, 2022. And that Zach Griba be appointed to the Waste Management Advisory Committee to replace Sarah Gosney, who has resigned for the remainder of the 4-year term to expire on the same date, November 14th, 2022. Is there a mover and a seconder to put that on the floor? Thank you, Mason, and thank you, Pat. Is there any discussion on that? Councillor Emond.
Thank you very much, Mayor Clark. I would like, on behalf of the selection panel and in fact, on behalf of all my council colleagues, to thank all of those individuals who put their names forward to serve our city in the various committees that we have. We value very much the opinion and time and energy that these individuals contributed, and it is a significant help to those of us on council to receive the advice that we do from the committees. I would like to point out that at the moment, we are still short 5 volunteers to step forward. We need another member of the Active Transportation Committee. We need another member of the Commemorative Awards Committee. The Farmers Market Advisory Committee is short a citizen. The Town and Gown Committee is short 1 person, and the Waste Management Advisory Committee is also short. So for those who are watching today, and if you have an interest in serving your city in a more active way, please do not hesitate to go online and to fill in the application form that exists there. And we will promptly adjudicate all the applications we get, and hopefully in another month, we'll be back at this table with some additional recommendations. Thank you, Mayor Clark.
Thanks very much for that, Councillor Freeman. And we'll ask if there's any further questions, comments, or discussion. I will now call the question that was moved by Mason and seconded by Pat. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Is it Robin or Ted introducing this? Guess I wasn't on mute. Anyway, Councillor Eamon, I think you're up again under board reports with respect to boards and committees selection panel.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Clark. The board and committee selection panel is recommending a change in the composition of the Active Transportation Committee, in which we will be suggesting that the committee be reduced from 11 members to 9 members, and that 3 of those members can be non-resident of the city. Currently, 4 members can be non-resident, but it's our intention to maintain the same ratio of resident to non-resident. The reason for this is that throughout the past year, the Active Transportation Committee has suffered a number of resignations and has had a difficulty in meeting quorum. And as a result, it's not been able to do as much work as it has traditionally done. And we believe that a 9-person board or a 9-person committee is of a size that will be able to meet quorum a little more easily, and has enough resource to do the kinds of activities that the committee is assigned and takes on behalf of our cities. So it is for that purpose that I would put this motion. I would be happy to move this motion on behalf of the boards and committee selection panel.
Thanks very much. Unless there's a desire to go in a different direction, I will ask that motion be put on the screen. I will read it and look for a seconder. That this committee recommends the council, thank you, Mason, that this committee recommends the council that has recommended the report SCL 2102 dated January 22nd, 2021, from the Boards and Committees Selection Panel, Chapter 118 of the City of Orillia Municipal Code, Active Transportation Committee be amended to reduce the composition of the committee from 11 members to 9 members, including the amendment to reduce maximum number of non-resident local representatives from 4 to 3, and that staff be directed to prepare the appropriate bylaw. I have that moved by Councillor Eamon and seconded by Councillor Ainsworth. Is there any further discussion? Councillor Ainsworth.
Yes, through you, Mayor Clark, I'm happy to support this moving forward. I think it's pretty logical. I now do sit on the Active Transportation Committee. And even our last meeting, which was a couple weeks ago now, we didn't have quorum. So there was quite a few of us who were sitting there for about 30 to 40 minutes, just waiting to hopefully have somebody else show up to get quorum. And then we didn't have quorum. So essentially that time, unfortunately, was wasted. So this is a real issue. And I think that this will help to address that. So thank you so much to the committee for bringing it forward.
Thank you for those comments, and certainly, as I believe identified in the report, any issues have certainly been exacerbated by the pandemic situation that we're in as well. So I appreciate that. Any further questions or comments? I'll call the question. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. And we're into council referrals. With respect to a request from the county, and I believe floor is all yours.
Thank you. The County of Simcoe has made a request for financial assistance in support of their affordable
I'm
housing
not
bill.
sure if anybody else can hear you, Jill, but I cannot. Can you guys hear Jill okay? Okay. Maybe I'll turn.
Can you hear me now, Mayor Clark? I'll start again. The County of Simcoe has made a request for financial assistance in support of their affordable housing build at 2 Borland Street East, which is the former ODCVI secondary school. They're requesting financial relief from paying building, planning, and engineering review fees, including service connections and road occupancy permits. They're also requesting to be exempt from legal fees. They're requesting that property taxes be levied at the single residential tax rate for 20 years, and they're requesting securities be waived. The value of these requests is in the range of approximately $375,000 to $385,000, depending on the assessed value of the build, which is unknown at this time. Council recently adopted a policy for handling requests for financial assistance for affordable housing. Through this policy, the county would be eligible to apply for relief up to the amount of $25,000 for building, planning, and engineering review fees and post 30% of the total value of securities. It is recommended that the policy be adhered to and the county make an application in accordance with our policy. As such, this report is being recommended to be received as information. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lewis, as always. I will now open the floor for discussion. Do we have Councillor Lauer with us as well? Oh, there he is. Oh, you request to speak as well. Good timing. Go right ahead.
Thanks, Mayor Clark. Just a couple questions for Jill. In the report, there seems to be quite a discrepancy between their estimate of what they're asking and what we think they're asking. Am I missing something in there, or are they just way out?
Through you, Mayor Clark, I'm not sure I understand the discrepancy. They include project cost figures, but they didn't outline the amount that they felt that they were going to receive financial support for.
Okay, I'm gonna have to check that. I thought I saw the number somewhere around $80,000 that they were anticipating they were going to be asking for less. They hadn't included the tax, but I'll check that through. My second question has to do with the existing parcel of land. Has there been any discussion about selling the remaining piece of that land? And the reason I ask that is obviously it would offset some of these costs that they're worried about. For the land, just through land value, but also I'm assuming if we put in some market rent residences along Peter Street, that we would increase our tax base, which would help things too. So I just wondered, is there any talk of that, or do they plan on just sitting on that land?
So I haven't recently been involved in those discussions. I understand they were going to leave the land for now, but Mr. Sugden may have more current information than I have.
Mr. Sugden, are you in the virtual hood?
Thank you, Mayor Clark. Unfortunately, I've heard nothing further from the county with respect to their concept of selling any land, and their current site plan submission does not show a parcel being created at this time.
Thank you. Tim, if you want to look up those numbers, and I will go to Rob and then Councillor Kluster and Councillor Eben.
Thank you, through you, Mayor Clark, to Ms. Lewis. Does this seem to be like a general ask for every type of these projects that the county is doing? And will this certainly, if the ask from the city of Orillia isn't granted, does this jeopardize the project, or does this mean the county has to go into reserves to make this project whole? Thanks.
I'm actually not too sure how this will impact the county of Simcoe. I haven't had conversations with them in terms of whether it will impact it. Now, they did indicate in their letter that they've received support from the other municipalities when they've done builds such as this nature of affordable housing. So we quoted a couple of the municipalities in the report. That's outlined there.
Thank you. Councillor Emond.
Thank you, Mayor Clark. I might be able to shed some light on the last two questions, if I may, on behalf of Councillor Keane and Mayor Clark, who also sit on the County Council Human Services Committee. The county has approved the full value of this development. All $79 million of monies have been authorized, and staff are attempting to negotiate at the fringe of that by diminishing the impact to the degree that they can, and this is a request of that nature. I do not believe in any way that the project would be a jeopardy if we return a request for them to bid within our policy. The point I would make is that this is the first time that they have sought this kind of relief from a separated city. All the other references, I believe, were within townships where they have a county levy as well as a township levy, and that's a slightly different circumstance. And as the report points out, we will be losing a significant tenant in the city center when the building is complete, and we'll be looking for the $100 and some thousand a year in terms of replacement income to the city. So this is important, and as well, we pay a portion of the construction cost is assigned to the city as a partner within the county. So those are, I mean, that's the reality of the county debate and discussion that took place last year. Plans are moving ahead to do the project, so I don't think we'll see any delay. As I recall, if I may, Mayor Clark, as I recall from the discussions, it was intended that at least for the next few years that the playing field space at the OCDVI site would remain as a green space and available for residents and I assume others in our community to use as a parquet. But basically, the county, I think, is going to keep it in inventory for consideration with respect to future needs that may occur that they could fulfill, since they now have the property.
Thanks, Councilman. You've captured, I think, very well the essence of what has taken place at County Council with respect to the approval of the project, with respect to the difference between the upper and lower tier municipalities, and it also referenced that we give on an annual basis to as part of our contribution to the county, who runs a number of services for us, I think about $1.862 million for housing, and this opportunity, and I thank County Council for it and county staff. We were in queue for this particular project, but we continue to resource on an annual basis that amount of money. And of course, as much as this project is wonderful, it does mean that the city will be losing a tenant to the tune of about $117,000, I believe, in City Hall, that we'll have to turn our minds to at some point. Sorry, Tim, I believe I had you in queue next. Go ahead.
Thanks, Mayor Clark. Just to let you know that I have sorted it out. And I dropped a zero off a couple numbers there that were actually intended for something else, so I apologize for that.
Zeros are dropped off the front of a number, it's not that big a deal. You're dropping them off the back end, it can be a game changer. Okay. In that case, I'm not hearing anybody going in a different direction other than the recommended direction. So I will ask for that motion to be put on the screen. That this committee recommends the council to report DSE 2105 dated January 22nd, 2021 for the Development Services and Engineering Department regarding the County of Simcoe's financial incentives request for the county Orillia campus development at 2 Borland Street be received as information. Excuse me, is there a mover and a seconder for that? Moved by Robert, seconded by Mason. I'll now entertain discussion on that proposed resolution. And just to be clear, I just want to make sure that if this goes ahead, that the county can still apply for the policy, the affordable housing policy incentive program. And that is certainly my understanding.
Mr. Mayor, yes, they could certainly apply for the policy. They're eligible. They've demonstrated that in their letter. It would be evaluated up to a value of $25,000, and then they could apply to post 30% of their security.
With respect to the securities, I know that with any development, the securities are taken and there's some inherent risk, I suppose, with any development. But do we see that risk with the county as the developer?
I wouldn't recommend that we take no securities, even from a government agency. We've had experience in the past where we haven't taken securities from government agencies. There were deficiencies on the site and they didn't end up getting rectified. And so at a minimum, staff would recommend that we require a posting of 30% of the total value of the securities.
Indeed, is captured in the report. Thank you. Any further questions, comments, discussion? I'll call the question. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you.
So they get detached.
Oh, did so? Oh yeah, I'm watching it. I didn't even notice. I'm watching it on my laptop. All right. Sorry, one moment here. So again, just a little bit of a technical difficulty with you as soon as I can. It's okay. Improv is our middle name. Improvisation is our middle name. We're now on to the next part of the meeting, or as I like to call it, the Greg Preston show. I think for the next 3 reports. The first one was with respect to the potential of banning single-use plastics. And Mr. Preston, are you here to introduce? You are right there. My goodness.
Yes.
Look at that white background. That's interesting. Anyway, if you would be so kind as to introduce the report, that'd be great.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the report before you talks about the feasibility of banning single-use plastics. The purpose of this report is to discuss the feasibility of potentially banning single-use plastics as requested by council at its meeting held on January 20th, 2020. It is recommended that the city support in principle the Government of Canada's proposed plan entitled A Proposed Integrated Management Approach to Plastic Products to prevent waste and pollution, and that a copy of this report be forwarded to the Honorable John Wilkinson, Federal Minister of Environment and Climate Change. This plan from the federal government currently proposes to ban the following single-use plastics: checkout bags, stir sticks, six-pack rings, straws, plastic cutlery, food takeout containers made from hard-to-recycle plastics. It is also recommended that where single-use products and packaging items that cannot be managed properly and where alternatives are available, the use of restrictions, bans, or requirements that reduce the risk of plastic pollution should be pursued. Implementing a single-use plastics ban is better suited and would have much more impact if implemented on a provincial or national scale. I'd be happy to answer any questions, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Yes, thanks for that, Greg. I have a couple of comments, but certainly understand the essence of the report in that the government is going in that direction, and the ultimate goal of the report, I think, was to certainly check the feasibility and the environmental benefit of considering a single-use ban to whatever the degree that looked like. If the feds are going to do it, then so be it, and good on them. I will, unless there's a desire to go in a different direction, I will put the motion on the screen. This committee recommends the council as recommended in the report EIS 2101 dated January 27th, 2021. Under the Environment and Infrastructure Services Department, the Government of Canada's proposed plan to ban or restrict certain single-use plastics across Canada as reported in its discussion paper entitled A Proposed Integrated Management Approach to the Plastic Products to Prevent Waste and Pollution be supported in principle. And that the Government of Canada be encouraged to support full extended producer responsibility, and where single-use products and packaging items cannot be managed properly and where alternatives can be utilized, the city supports the use of restrictions, bans, and requirements that reduce the risk of plastic pollution. And that a copy of this report be forwarded to the Honorable Jonathan Wilkinson, Minister of the Environment and Climate Change. Is there a mover and a seconder to put that on the floor? Thank you, David, and thank you, Patricia and Mason. I will now entertain questions, comments, and discussion. Pat.
Thank you. Although I completely support it in principle, I would note that during the pandemic, there are some grocery stores right now that will not allow you to use recyclable bags. So although I have a bunch of them in my trunk, I can't necessarily use them in some grocery stores. So it's just a comment that some grocery stores prefer you to use the single-use bags at the present time.
Yeah, I certainly believe that was the case. That seems to have changed a little bit. They may not touch the bags themselves, but I know more of them are letting the reusable or washable bags back in. I've got Mason and then Tim.
Yes, through you, Mayor Clark, happy to support this moving forward, and just to point out that it is supporting in principle. So really, it's not doing anything. It's just saying, yeah, like that sounds interesting. If you folks do it, you do it. If you don't, you don't. But encouraging that type of thinking, I think is a good idea.
Thank you for that. Certainly, as one of the people, along with Councillor Sepulveda, that asked for this report, my hope is that they do something. And if they don't, I would fully expect to bring this back to council at some point. But certainly, my hope is that the federal government does do that. Councillor Lauer.
Thanks, Mayor Clark. I have a couple questions and a proposal. The first question through you to Mr. Preston. On page 4, bullet 4, we state that the city could not be challenged in court on its authority to enact its own local mandatory ban. And then under option 2, there's another bullet that says Although the municipal act appears to provide the city authority to ban single-use plastic, such a bylaw could potentially be legally challenged. Is that a typo or am I misreading one of them?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Councillor Lauer. The point that I was trying to make there is that it is our opinion that the city can legally ban single-use plastics in the city of Orillia. The concern is that that ban could be challenged in court by those that manufacture and supply plastics in the area. Thank you.
Okay, well, both of them actually speak to being challenged. The first statement is that we could not be challenged in the court. And the second one is that we could be. But anyway, my second question has to do with the stewardship program. Can I go ahead with that?
Right ahead.
Yeah, okay. So now the stewardship program isn't discussed too much in this, but I'm just thinking ahead and thinking in terms of product stewardship. Is there any contingency in that program to reimburse municipalities for dealing with litter?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, actually, to get back to your original question, I see exactly what you're saying there. That is a typo. I shouldn't have said the city could not be challenged. We could be challenged if we enacted our own bylaws. So I just wanted to clarify that. Thank you. And getting to your second question, my understanding is there's not been a discussion of litter being included in the blue box transition that is we're looking to do in 2024. So I'm not aware of that, the cost of litter collection being included in the blue box transition program, where the city would be compensated by producers that of packaging that ends up as litter. I'm not aware of any discussions on that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And if I could, Mayor Clark, or unless you want to go ahead and come back to me.
At the moment, I don't have anybody else in queue, so go right ahead.
Okay, so thanks. I'd like to propose a postponement here. I'd like to send this report, not only Greg's, not that necessarily to look at Greg's so much as to look at the discussion paper, but I'd like to postpone it and send it to our Environmental Advisory Committee for comment, to Sustainable Orillia for comment, and to the Conservancy for comment. I appreciate the comments that are in Greg's report, but I think this is a much bigger question for a municipality than simply just do we want to endorse some the federal government's direction. If you read through some of the research material that's available online, there's a lot of opinion being thrown out on this particular discussion paper. Certainly a lot of different opinions, a lot of people thinking that this is nowhere near being strong enough. There's an opinion out there that this is not being, this is not the end of the line for a municipality, that a municipality can do a lot more than what's being suggested here. The bottom line is we're talking about a toxic. Plastic is going to be joining the toxic substance list of the Environmental Protection Act if Ottawa goes ahead with what they said they were going to do. So it's a little bit more than just recycling here. It's how do we get this out of the system, basically. And there's all kinds of solutions contained in this report that I think are best described as smoke and mirrors. We're talking about a circular economy with recyclables, and I think I would describe it more as a loop or two leading to a flat line. I mean, we originally started recycling with, I guess, metal was probably the first, and then glass and things like that. And they're 100% recyclable, and they can be recycled for years and years and years, and time after time. They do get contaminated, and you do have problems, but certainly it's considered unlimited. So when plastic came along, I think a lot of people thought that they were throwing a plastic bottle into a blue bin and thinking, there I go, they're just going to recreate another bottle and life goes on, and this is a good thing. But in fact, that's not what happens. As the report itself says, we're only recycling 80% or something like that. And I realize it's their goal to bring that down, but regardless of what they do, there's going to be plastic in the system. There's going to be toxins in the system. There's going to be microplastics in the system. And there's a bigger solution here, I think, that has to be flagged. And indeed, in the report itself, it lists a whole bunch of questions that they're looking for answers for. So to that end, of going on and making the whole argument now, I think it would be appropriate to send this off to the groups that I've mentioned. There's a whole whack of people in this town that are very invested in the environmental issue. I think we could tap into a lot of the expertise that are on some of these other committees, certainly our own EAC, but also the Coaching Conservancy and Sustainable Orillia. So when the time comes when you feel there's been enough discussion on this, I would like to propose a post and have this referred to those committees for comment. I believe no conflict here, but I think Christine has made up a motion that she could put up if someone's willing to support the postponement. So what's got to happen is the postponement has to be approved, and then I would bring forward another motion that would refer this to those other committees for feedback that would come back around March, the end of March. And then we would have that much more education and information to proceed with exactly what we want to say to the minister. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Before I entertain the motion or even the debate on the motion to postpone, I will still need to be satisfied that we've got a wholesome discussion on the main motion. So I'll go to David and then to Jay.
Actually, Mayor Clark, I was going to support Councillor Lauer's motion for the reasons that he stated.
All right, thank you. So when we get to that postponement, I'll take you down as the shaker and the mover and shaker. Councillor Follis.
Thanks, through the chair. Just a quick comment. Happy to support this motion. Tim, I know you mentioned if it could come back in March. Yeah, I didn't know if it might be possible to incorporate like a final date so we can ensure that the comments do get to the federal government with some time, so that it, at the very least, those comments can be heard as the debate's kind of ongoing. I wondered if that's already been incorporated, or if it could be.
So Jay, you're talking about the postponement again? Okay. Any further discussion on the main motion as presented? Okay. Now I will entertain a discussion on the motion to postpone. Sorry, Ted, on the motion to postpone or on the original motion? On the original motion, go right ahead.
No, on postponement, if you're asking for that.
So I've got a motion moved by Tim and seconded by by David to postpone this. We can discuss the conditions and the date of the postponement. And then as I understand it, if that is successful, there's a desire to put some parameters around what would happen to some consultation before it came back to council. So on that motion to postpone, go ahead, Ted. I think you're on mute there, Ted.
I'm sorry, Mayor Clark. I'm not fully understanding why we need to postpone this but rather, why aren't we just amending it to ask for input from those agencies? The motion is simply supporting what the federal government is doing, which I think we should do regardless. If in fact the federal government doesn't do anything, we will have the input of these agencies to guide us in doing what we do. If the advice that comes from these agencies suggests that we do more than the federal government is doing, if they do act, we will have that information. But in the meantime, we as a city are indicating our support for a move in this direction. And we're supporting our federal government in doing something on a national scale. I'm not quite sure the benefit, the additional benefit we get from a postponement at this point in time, since this is really a supportive action.
So just so I understand what you're saying, Ted, is that these two items do not have to be inclusive of each other. We could support what the federal government's doing and still go to these agencies and ask for input. And if that feedback comes back or input comes back and suggests that maybe we should be doing something in addition to what the federal government does, we can consider that. Or if the federal government, should there be an election or whatever happens, does not go ahead with what they're doing, then we would be armed with some information with which to make our own policy decisions. Have I kind of captured the spirit of that?
That's exactly what I was suggesting.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments on the postponement, Tim?
Thanks, Mayor Clark. What I'm speaking to is the second paragraph. The first paragraph obviously says we can approve this in principle, send that off, but it's the second paragraph that is a comment, which is written by staff. And we, I think, should be taking our time, discussing this fully, getting a bit more community input and elaborating on that particular paragraph. Now, I mean, if you want to axe it off and approve the first one and then send it in, I don't think that makes much sense. I don't think this is as a time crunch by any means. They're talking about having something done by the end of the year. So I think we can certainly take a couple months to consolidate an opinion, maybe go through some of the questions that are in the discussion paper, and maybe comment on some of them as well, and get a fulsome opinion out, as opposed to going ahead right now. So that is why I'm asking for postponement. We farm this out to our groups, and we get the feedback back, and we formulate a response that is going to go to the minister that might have just a little bit more detail and represent exactly what we want to do.
Greg, go right ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just wanted to comment further to Councillor Lauer's point. Yeah, I'm sure the federal government would take comments at any point. They did actually have a deadline of December 9th for the questions that they raised in the discussion paper, as you'll see in that discussion paper. So I'm sure they would still be open to hearing feedback at a later time, but I just wanted to bring that fact forward. Thank you.
Thank you for that. If I can make just a couple of comments. I mean, my ultimate goal, and I know Ralph and I had some discussions, and I'm sure others around the table felt the same way, was how do we've got to, in many ways, not with all plastics certainly, but in many ways, certainly with single-use plastics, many of them, there's a scourge, whether it's in our parks, our roadways, our waterways, and to some degree in our animals with the macroplastics. The goal was to bring some meaningful change. I will say that when we asked for this, I don't think we had heard about the government's plan at that point. I stand to be corrected. and therefore was looking for a wholesome policy that the city could implement to bring about either initially a voluntarily or a mandatory single-use plastics ban. And that's what I was looking for. But I also understand that if the federal government is going to go ahead and do this, and largely, I assume largely in the way that we would, and I think maybe that's where Tim's questions are. They have the ability to work with the provinces as articulated in the report and bring about meaningful change in terms of mandating the percentage of recycled plastic that needs to be in new plastic, in terms of perhaps even recycle markets for some of the remaining plastics, the circular economy related to that, and certainly the extended producer responsibility, which I'm hoping that we see it across Canada. So I guess my point is, in the end, I understand the report that came forward, and that accompanying paper was quite informative. But if the federal government does indeed move ahead, that will indeed probably create some synergies and resource and policy change that we can have an impact on locally, but not to the degree that a federal policy would, working with the provincial governments. I do believe I saw, Ralph, you had your sign up. If you want to speak, go right ahead.
Yeah, can you hear me now? Okay. Thank you, and I apologize. I'm talking to Kurt and everything else. There's problems with trying to get on from the internet, but thank you very much for being patient with me. Regarding the single-use plastics and everything else, I attended, as you did, Mayor Clark, the webinar on Save Lake Simcoe, and there was a lot of great speakers on there and a good presentation. One of the main causes of the pollution, as well as the health of our animals, was the plastic that goes into the lake. And I guess I have a question for Greg. If it's broken down and everything else, these little particles that go into the lake, can it get into our drinking water as well? Apparently, they said there is a possibility that it does affect our drinking water because Lake Simcoe flows into Cooch. So I'm just wondering if the sooner we get on this, the better it is. And I can appreciate all the delays and everything else waiting for the federal government. But I think it's so important that the single-use plastic, we do something in Orillia, because it does affect. Mayor Clark, as you know, we Long Lake Cooching there by in front of the Legion there. I think you and I were walking it or whatever it was. I remember a little while back that you could see tons and tons of plastic bottles, plastic bags in the water as well, which affects our animal life down there as well. So I'm just wondering through you, Mr. Mayor, to Greg, if it does, when they break down into small particles, affects our drinking water.
Discussion really is around whether to postpone this or not. If that's going to affect your decision, Ralph, on whether to postpone or not, then please, Greg, go ahead, Nancy.
Yeah.
You want me to respond? Sorry.
Sorry, that's fine.
Oh. Yeah, okay, I'll comment, and if Mr. Shell wants to add anything in, that would be great too. Our filtration process is quite comprehensive for our drinking water system. I'm not aware of any issues with microplastics getting into our drinking water. Andrew can probably provide better feedback on that, but it hasn't been identified as a concern that I'm aware of. Thank you, Andrew.
Mr. Shell?
Yes, through you, Mayor Clark, and thanks to Mr. Preston, and his response is certainly correct. Currently, there are many studies going on to try and understand microplastics and how it's affecting every area. At this point in time, Greg is correct. Certainly nothing. We have sand filtration systems, so although these are fairly micro in size, at this point in time, from the studies that I've been reading on the water side, at this point in time, it is not as concerning, but there are many studies occurring, and at this point in time, there's just nothing out there to be conclusive as of yet. So we can't be positive one way or the other.
Thank you. Well, thank you all for that. Okay, back to, is there any further discussion on the motion to postpone? Tim, last word, and then I'll call the question on the motion to postpone.
Thanks, Mayor Clark. We talked about amending this or whatever, but I don't really care how we do this. If you want to amend this, or if you just want to postpone it and then have a motion to refer this to the other organizations I've met. But I do think it's very important that we get their intake and make a strong and informed comment back to the minister. The report, in my opinion, which is just my opinion, deals only with the low hanging fruit. I mean, this question is huge. It's a significant health issue. It's right, in my opinion, next to the issues we have with fossil fuels. And if people don't think that municipalities can do anything in these cases, you're wrong. The smoking bylaws that are all over Ontario and Canada, and Ralph will remember this discussion, started with municipalities. The municipality was the one who started the discussion, started bringing in small, Mayor Clark, you remember this too, because you were a part of that on the other side. And then the province stepped in, and the higher governments get involved. It was the same with pesticides. So what I'm saying is, it's important. This is a very, very important issue, and it's very important for this municipality to make a strong, informed statement. And so that's where I want to go. Now, if you want to do it through an amendment, or if you want to do it through a postponement, one way or the other, I would really like to see that happen at this meeting.
Thank you for that. When you mentioned that I was on the other side, I would suggest that I was on the very same side of the smoking ban, just with a slightly different perspective. We're coming from.
No, sorry. The other side. Sorry, you were as opposed to a politician, you were a real person.
That's right. Okay. Any further discussion on the motion to postpone? That's moved by Tim and seconded by David. I will now call the question on the motion to postpone. That is carried. For clarity, March 22nd is adequate? Tim, that'll be directed at you, I presume?
I'm sorry, I haven't actually seen the date. March 22nd?
Yes. I'm also going to suggest, if the government was taking consultation input until December 9th, they'll be well on their way into formulating their policy, and the last few months will be spending figuring out the logistics of the rollout. But Greg, you want to have an input on this? Go right ahead.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, I should have clarified when I first spoke about that. It's December 9th, 2020 that they asked for feedback, not December 9th, 2021. It was, so I just wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
Yeah, that was certainly my understanding from the chair. So that was 2020. And so I'm not sure how much we're going to have an influence on the federal government at this point. Anyway, okay, so we've got a motion to postpone. It's postponed until March 22nd, unless I hear something differently. Okay, so it's either February 22nd or March 22nd. So I think if we're going to give time for consultation, then probably March 22nd with other meeting schedules. that will impact turnaround time. Now, I'll just turn to our clerk's department. What direction do we need to ensure that this gets to WEMAC and Sunshine, there's sustainable Orillia, et cetera?
Thank you, Mayor Clark. And through you, what I would recommend at this time is that Councillor Lauer move a motion. We do have a draft of that prepared in order to encapsulate the groups he's wishing to invite to provide comment on this issue.
Sorry, just for clarity from the chair's position, Councillor Lauer, are you looking for input on the feasibility of a banning single-use plastics, or are you looking for input on the result of the report before us, or what is the question we will be asking our stakeholder partners?
Okay, Mayor Clark, I haven't actually seen the final form of this. So if somebody could put it back up on the screen.
I will also read it just for added clarity. This committee recommends the council further to the report EIS 2101-01 dated January 27th, 2021 from the Environment and Infrastructure Services Department. The report be forwarded to the following with an invitation to provide written comments on the feasibility of banning single-use plastics to the environmental, to EAC, Environmental Advisory Committee, to the Couchiching Conservancy and Sustainable Orillia. That is the motion that I guess from conversations you were having with staff that is on the floor. Jay, I've got you in queue. So I just want clarity from the chair. So we're asking them for input on the report or something different?
Are you asking me, Mayor Clark?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. No, I'm not. I don't think that. What's that?
I couldn't hear you when you started talking.
Can you hear me now? Okay. I'm looking not necessarily to comment on just the feasibility of doing it. I mean, that's kind of a staff question. I'm looking for comments on the discussion paper and the report itself. So I'm not sure if we need the word feasibility in there. And I'm just also wondering if we need some reference to the discussion paper, which is contained in the report, I realize, but I don't know if we need to identify it.
Yeah, so I'm just trying to think. I'm just trying to make staff. Are you, or maybe you figured this out well ahead of the mayor? What is the question that we will be asking these groups? What's the direction we'll be asking? Madam CAO, sorry.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I understand exactly where you're going, because at this point it's not clear. If we are looking for them to provide comment on the discussion paper and the report, which the discussion paper is part of the report, your motion that is asking for that should be very clear. And right now, I don't believe it is clear. I think it is just simply saying the feasibility of banning plastics. So I think there needs to be an amendment from at least some clarity from the person, Councillor Lauer, that is presenting the motion to ensure that we capture what ultimately council is looking for.
Yeah. So Tim, what's if you could in one sentence say to EAC, what would the sentence be? What would the question be?
Okay, so first of all, I apologize. Christine and I sort of worked this back and forth, but I never did see the final copy before it has arrived here. What I'm looking for is these organizations, these groups, to comment on the report and the discussion paper. There's lots of questions asked in the discussion paper, and so I would like them all included in the discussion and comments come back on them. So the feasibility of of banning single-use plastic is a little narrow. And I'm just wondering, does it need to be amended, or because it hasn't been moved and seconded yet, can it just be changed?
No. Yeah, it has not been, it's not formally on the floor yet. So it could be changed.
And the other question I would ask is anybody interested in adding a name to those groups? There's a question whether we want to allow Mr. Reiner to have further discussion or further comment on the actual report, or does WEMAC want to wade back in despite the fact that they did comment through the first report?
Yeah. Sorry, I didn't know I was on mute. Jay, I do have you in queue. So I'm just going to read this motion and then I will, if there's a mover and a seconder, great. If there's a mover and a seconder, then I'll put it on the floor for formal discussion. This committee recommends the council that further to the report EIS 2101 dated January 27th, 2021, from the Environment and Infrastructure Services Department, the report be forwarded to the following with an invitation to provide written comments on the report and the discussion paper. Environmental Advisory Committee, Acoustic Conservancy, and Sustainable Orillia. Is there a mover and a seconder to put that on the floor formally? Moved by Tim, seconded by David. And now I will entertain discussion. I believe I have Jay and then Ted.
Thanks. Through the chair, apologies for the sign up and down there. Just two comments. I wanted to make sure that an end date be included in that in the motion there that we had been discussing, whatever kind of works. March 22nd, if that's kind of what people were settling on, I'm more than happy with that. The other element was I was satisfied with the list as it's written. With WEMAC, we have kind of commented already. I was thinking about it after I talked with Tim directly earlier today, and you're welcome to send it back. I don't know if there'll be any additional comments because it's already been reviewed, but kind of whatever the council decides on that one. But just wanted to leave you with those. Just wanted to add those two comments in.
Thank you for that, Jay. I did just turn to staff and they will take March 22nd as direction to staff to bring it back. And now Ted.
Thank you, Mayor Clark. Unfortunately, we now have a moved and seconded motion, and I have a couple of comments that probably would have been easier to deal with as we were shaping the motion, not now having to amend the motion if we are. But as I heard Tim earlier, he's looking for a much broader consideration of plastics and their impact on our environment than is suggested in the somewhat narrow point of view of the federal government's action, which I think is just the first step in taking action. So in that sense, this could go in a number of different directions, and that's comfortable, but those take a lot of time and may take a lot of research. Secondly, I'm wondering if we're looking at what we want is commentary in a general sense, or do we want commentary on what Orillia should be specifically considering in the context of the federal government step and the future of the program to make manufacturers responsible. And finally, I do believe that it's important for us to continue to demonstrate to our local industry that we are anxious and open to their consideration. So I think they should be added as a as a common commentator here, notwithstanding that the report does include the opinion of Mr. Ryder. But I also think that this is an area that we could learn from the tree policy discussion, that it is certainly a policy that is leading us to a future that is appropriate, but is getting quite a bit of pushback from the general population. And we included in that a public consultation process. And I'm quite convinced that the move to be more environmentally friendly in terms of the specific actions are going to have to be incremental actions that we take one and then build on that and take another one and take another one. That to try and jump to the end right away will get a significant public pushback, and that we need to be open to consultation with our citizens on the plans that we put forward of that nature, because it's not that we're opposed. I'm certainly not opposed in any way to a move in this direction, but I'm opposed to taking an action that won't have the support of our people, and therefore we lose rather than incrementally move in the right direction. So there are just some thoughts in terms of how we could make this more wholesome, from my perspective, but I'm not overly interested at this point in trying to figure out how to put an amendment forward that would capture all of that. So short of including Mr. Reinert and Berry Plastics as part of the consultation group.
Certainly engage other stakeholders, but I assume that would be an amendment to the amendment, but and that's certainly quite doable. Like you, Ted, I mean, the ultimate goal for me, and Ralph, you're right, you can walk anywhere in this community, or not far, almost anywhere in this community, and find evidence of single-use plastics, whether it's in the ditch that we on pitch-in day, or whether it's at the port, sometimes in the edge of the water, or the beaches, wherever it happens to be, it's prevalent. And the goal is to do something about that and to mitigate the harmful effects and look for meaningful and alternative solutions and methods of delivering whatever these plastics deliver. But that is also why when the report identified some of the things that the federal government is going to do this year. It's not that we have to wait 2 years or 3 years or 4 years for their action. My understanding is they'll be implemented later this year. And whether that's the be all end all or not, I don't know. But I was willing to, when I saw the report, see what the federal government did, and then see if we had any meaningful things that we could add to that to make this area even more responsible when it comes to handling plastic products. Anyway, having said all that, we've got a motion to postpone until March. Well, it'll come back around March 22nd. I've got a desire to include again, if they wish to weigh back in the industry, the plastics industry representatives we have in this community. So we'll have to do that as an amendment to the amendment, right? Oh yeah, sorry, this is not. That's right. This is a. Yeah. So, Ted, are you comfortable if it just says local plastic manufacturers, or do you want to identify them specifically? You're okay? So that's fine, Megan. Thank you. Okay.
Yes.
And we've had a pretty good long conversation about this. I think we understand based on the wording of this motion, the subsequent motion. And so I think now I will ask for the amendment to appear on the screen, that the motion now before committee be amended by adding the following at the end of the paragraph: other local plastic. I'm not sure if we need the word other, because that would preclude us from going back to whom. Well, I think the word other would preclude him from going back to whom he had conversations with before. So do we just want to take out, just leave in local, oh, I see, polyethics is in the original motion. So other plastic manufacturers, I think is quite fine. Okay, Ted, does that capture what you were after, that amendment? Okay. Is there a seconder for the proposed amendment? Okay, well, hold on, before I go there, Tim on process or the wording of the amendment, and then Ralph.
No, I'm fine with the amendment. I'm just wondering, Jay has mentioned WEMAC a couple times, and before we make it a formal amendment, do we want to add WEMAC, or Jay, do you just want to take it back on your own?
Through the chair, I don't mind if it's included in there. I don't know if we'll get any additional comments just because they've already seen it. And the sense I got was I didn't get, there wasn't a lot of drive to add anything more than what's been already said. So that was more just my thinking, is I don't think there'll be any comments to come, but I could be wrong. So you could, you can always send it down for the benefit. What's that?
You like it included in there or no? I'm not hearing a lot of merit for it, but you would know better.
I don't think it's necessary unless other councillors see it as necessary.
Okay, I'm good with that. I'll second the amendment as it is.
Okay. Ralph, on process or on the wording of the amendment? No? Okay. So it's moved by Ted and seconded by Tim on the amendment. Any further discussion on the amendment to the main motion? I'll now call the question. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Back to the main motion. Would anybody like it reread? All right, any further discussion? I'll call the question on the main motion. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. So, Mr. Preston, just so I'm clear from the chair, are you trying to get all your work done in the first month of the year?
Yes, indeed.
With respect to waste minimization plans, I believe, Greg, you're going to introduce this report as well.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the purpose of this report is to discuss the outstanding recommendations from the 2016 waste minimization plan that have not been addressed to date. Many of these recommendations were anticipated to be addressed earlier in 2020, but with the workload additions applicable due to the COVID-19 pandemic, this was not possible. It is recommended that the outstanding recommendations of the 2016 waste minimization plan be referred to included with the 2021 waste minimization plan that is going to be under development this spring. I'd be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
And thank you for that. Unless there's a desire to go in a different direction, I'll ask for that motion to be put on the screen, the recommended motion. I'll read it and I'll look for a mover and a seconder. This committee recommends the council has recommended the report EIS 2102 dated January 27, 2021 from the Environment and Infrastructure Services Department. Recommendations 6B, 12B, 12C, 13C, 13D, and 22 of the City of Orillia's 2016 waste minimization. I believe that consultation took place in this very chamber, be referred to and included as recommendations within the city's 2021 waste minimization plan for further consideration. Is there a mover and a seconder to put that on the floor? Thank you, Mason, and thank you, David. Is there any questions for Mr. Preston or other questions, discussion? I will call the question. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. But don't go anywhere yet, Mr. Preston. Okay, with respect to the potential of clear plastic garbage bag collection program, Mr. Preston.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The purpose of this report is to discuss recommendation 4 from the city's 2016 waste minimization plan, which was looking to assess the implementation of a clear garbage bag program. So of note, clear garbage bag programs are basically asking people to set their garbage out in clear plastic bags versus using opaque plastic bags. They are set up to encourage residents to properly sort their recyclable and compostable materials, as people don't typically want to show their neighbors that they're not recycling. Clear bag programs initiated in other municipalities have typically seen a significant increase in the diversion of at least 10% and would help the city of Orillia reach its goal of 70% waste diversion rate. It is recommended that a clear garbage bag program be initiated in Orillia starting at the beginning of February of 2022. This time frame of 1 year allows retailers to stock their shelves with clear bags and gives residents time to get ready for the simple changeover of using clear bags in place of opaque garbage bags. It is also proposed that residents be able to use up to 2 privacy bags, which are opaque shopping bags, for example, for each clear bag to hide items they do not want their neighbors to see. Residents would still be able to set out garbage loose in a rigid container or use a rigid container to hide things like sanitary products if they don't want their neighbors to see that. The measure is meant to educate residents on the city's recycling and green bin organics collection programs, should they not be found to be participating in the diversion programs. There would still not be a set fine in place for setting out recyclable, compostable materials mixed in the garbage bag under the proposed measure. The garbage would just be left behind, and generally for the most apparent infractions, we don't have the resources to be going around to a lot of locations to pick up garbage that's been left behind. So we would be focusing on the most apparent infractions. I'd be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Jay, go right ahead. Then Ted, then Pat.
Thanks, Steve. Sorry, I guess the issue with the microphone there or something. Before we got into discussion, I wanted to put forward a motion here. I'm actually going to ask, I'm the rep for the WEMAC committee for council. I'm actually going to ask that this report be sent back down to WEMAC. I had some discussions over the weekend, and there were some questions raised around the use of virgin plastic as an element within clear plastic bags. And so I really want to ensure that I've got those questions answered. I want to make sure that we kind of understand the full scope of the environmental issues that are associated, the benefits and the drawbacks associated with this program. So what I was going to put forward actually is a request that it be sent back down to WEMAC with it coming back within the next couple of months. I believe I've put a date on that sometime in April. That should give us enough time just to hear from, I was hoping to hear from an academic expert on the subject, as well as from another city that currently has a program of this nature in place. We did hear from Markham already, but I think there's an opportunity opportunity to hear from some other municipalities. I'm aware of, I believe Greg would know all this, but Guelph is one municipality in our area that does have this program. Greg, were you saying Peterborough as well? Another program that has the clear plastic bag initiative. So that was basically what I wanted to put forward, just a chance to get a bit more information before this comes to council and we make a final decision on it. I don't, and Greg could comment on this, I don't think this should affect the timeline in any way, because this would be by 2022 that we'd be looking to introduce this. So it still gives us enough time to kind of, if we do go forward with it, get everything kind of ready. So just wanted to put that forward, and happy to kind of hear from the rest of the council on any comments. Thanks.
But just to be clear, it did go to WEMAC, I think, recently, did it not? Greg, in response to that, please.
Yes, it did, Mr. Mayor. And just to add to what he's saying, the city of Peterborough has not considered a clear bag program at this point. The municipalities that we know have clear bag programs are the city of Markham, Dufferin County, which includes the town of Orangeville, the town of Godrich, and the city of Guelph. Thank you.
Thank you. I've got Ted, Pat, and then Mason.
Mayor Clark, if I may, if we're going to postpone it, I'm not going to waste my time asking a logistics question about the process. So I'll wait till we decide to either put the motion forward or not.
Thank you for that, Pat and Mason.
Yeah, I had a question, which sounds probably pretty funny, about pet waste. And I'm sure I'm not the only person with a pet, but you've got a hamster, a bird, a gerbil, whatever, a kitty litter. How do you handle that? Because there's, paper lining cages, which gets pretty dirty. I don't know what happens with kit litter. I've never had a cat, but how do you look after all that pet waste?
I'm thinking that was probably a very appropriate question for the previous report, but if you could tie that into a clear plastic bag answer, Mr. Preston, that'd be appreciated.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So we would have vigorous training in place for our collection drivers to understand what constitutes an infraction. So if somebody is wrapping their kitty litter in a newspaper, it would be quite apparent to a collection driver because of the weight of the material. And at present, as you know, kitty litter is not included in our green bin program. So we would be looking for residents, for example, that would be setting out their garbage in clear plastic bags, but not setting out their recycling boxes or green bins. And you look in the bags and you see nothing but containers and cardboard and things like that. That's really what the focus of this would be. We would not be focusing on the odd piece of newspaper, a bundle of newspaper in there if we suspect it's just the resident dealing with their pet waste in that fashion. So, no, great question, and we would really watch that in our training of the collection drivers. Thank you.
That's thank you very much, Pat and Greg. Mason.
Yes, through you, Mayor Clark, similar to Councillor Eland, I definitely have some questions and some comments that I could make, but I'm happy to second Councillor Follis's motion to postpone this. I think getting additional information, especially in regards to the virgin plastics and such, and some of the details behind that would be interesting, because before he called me today, that's something I hadn't thought too much about, and we definitely don't want to be creating a situation where we're creating an additional problem that's creating more waste, essentially. So I think just getting some more information, especially from those municipalities that have a lot more data on it, would be great. Thank you.
Well, I was glad you have your hand up, Mr. Preston, because I was just going to ask Councillor Fallis or Councillor Ainsworth if they could maybe direct that question to you as an alternative or as in addition to where they want to go.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To address that comment, it's a great comment, great question to have from Councillor Fallis and Ainsworth. So the whole drive of this proposed program is to cut the amount of waste going into our landfill. And like I mentioned earlier, we could look to increase our diversion rate by 10%, which is about 1,000 metric tons of garbage. That's a significant amount of garbage and plastic going into our landfill at present. My understanding, and I mean, I'll just give you my understanding of it, is the clear plastic is definitely a virgin product. The opaque bags that are out there are also primarily made of virgin material. They add a dye to it to get it the opaque color. You can make recycled garbage bags out of recycled plastics. My understanding is what they do is you have a layer of virgin material, a layer of recycled plastics material, and then another layer of virgin material just to ensure the integrity of that plastic liner. There is an opportunity though where you're actually you're having a thicker line garbage bag by using recycled plastics within a garbage bag. So that just a point to raise. But no, it certainly is an opportunity for the opaque bags can be made of recycled content, that's for sure. Whereas the clear plastic bags, my understanding is they can't. You get a milky white color if you try and use some recycled material within those bags. So again, the whole drive of this program is to really cut down the amount of garbage that is being put out at the curb to begin with. Thank you.
Jay, go right ahead.
Thanks. Just a quick comment there on what Greg was saying, without kind of getting into the meat of the debate, because I think there'll be an opportunity to do that later. But certainly a lot of the statistics we are seeing very positive in terms of diversion rate. So certainly it'll be interesting to kind of see this report when it does come to council, hopefully if this motion passes. Thanks.
Thank you. Pat, I've got one or two questions for Greg, but you go right ahead.
On the clear plastic, wouldn't the pale blue ones that we use now for the recycling, wouldn't they be clear enough to use it? Does it have to be clear plastic?
Right.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, we say clear plastic because if you say clear blue plastic, for example, some residents may purchase bags that are essentially clear, but they're too milky in color, too, what's the word? I guess they're too cloudy, I guess, for the drivers to clearly see within them. So that is the concern with allowing blue transparent bags out there. Some of the blue bags aren't overly transparent, so people would think they're in compliance even though they're not. Thank you.
I have a couple of quick questions for Greg, if that's okay with council. Greg, are there bags for sale in Orillia that are made from recycled plastic? Or are they a rare breed?
Through Mr. Mayor, my understanding was Polyethics did have a product that at one time was made out of recycled plastics. I can't say like a garbage bag that was actually made out of recycled plastics. I'm not sure if they still have that brand. Sorry.
And in the report, you referenced a few other municipalities and how they've had some success, I believe, with their diversion because of the clear bags. But I don't know if you reference the percentage of success or the amount of success they had. I know you referenced that ours, you're hoping to save 1,000 tons of waste a year by going to this, which tells me what it should do for us. But do we know what it did for them other than showed them improvement? And if I missed that, I'm very sorry.
No. Through Mr. Mayor, Markham has seen a 11% increase in their diversion rate just from going to a clear plastic bag, and it was so people didn't want their neighbors to see that they weren't recycling, so there was more tendency to participate in the program. The other thing that when Claudia Marcells came to talk with WEMAC, Councillor Follis and WEMAC and I, she had mentioned that it also helped them identify what was the next low-hanging fruit in terms of diversion. And what they discovered was that textiles were a big issue, that they didn't realize how much textiles was getting in the garbage stream. So they developed quite a unique program in the city of Markham to collect textiles from residents in partnership with a charitable organization. So just wanted to thank you.
Thanks very much for that, Greg. And of course, you remind me that Orillia was #1, I believe, in the province of waste diversion until that sneaky little sleepy town of Markham snuck ahead of us. So if we can move them off that spot again, that'd be great. And not because they would be doing more poorly, because we would be doing better. It's funny, Greg, I thought when I left my teenage years, most of the peer pressure was behind me, but you're saying that is largely the motivation for the success of this program. So I'll have to get used to it again. Okay, I don't even have the original motion on the floor, and we've had some chats around postponement, so I will put the motion on the floor. And if there's any further discussion, I'll entertain it then. If there isn't, then we'll entertain the discussion to postpone. No, sorry, Madam Deputy Clerk, please weigh in.
Thank you, Mayor Clark, and through you. I believe what I have heard is Councillor Follis wishing to introduce an alternative motion. And I do have it marked down as Councillor Ainsworth as seconding that motion. So you do have a duly moved and seconded motion, if I am correct. And so that motion should be put first.
Just so I'm clear, Mason, thank you. I'll go with you one moment, thank you. So you're suggesting, based on the discussion, that I should be putting the original motion on the floor, I should be putting an alternative motion on the floor. Okay, so if it isn't passed, do we go back to the original motion? All right. I think that's fine.
And through you, Mayor Clark, just to clarify, I didn't second any motion. I did second an attempt to postpone the motion for when that came up. So essentially we'd be on the original motion.
Yeah, that is my understanding as well, but no, okay. We don't have a motion on the floor, so what I'm going to do is I can either have you put the motion on there that you believe captured the conversation, or I think I'll put the original motion on there before I get a mover to seconder for it. I'll see if there's a desire to go in a different direction. Yeah, okay. And then I'll go to Ted. Unless there's a reason for you to jump in on process right now.
Well, I am jumping in on process because I did understand that Councillor Follis was putting forward was recommending an alternative motion, and I think he has every right to do that if he can get a seconder for it before the original motion goes on the table. So okay. So Jay, if I could, I'm going to get so you and Christine believe that you have that motion captured. So let's put it on the screen. Let's see if Councillor Follis is happy with the wording of it. Assuming he'll be the mover, then we'll look for a seconder. I'm not sure. Okay, I'm going to read this and then I will see if there's any discussion. That this committee recommends the council that further the report EIS 2101 dated January 27th, 2021 from the Environment and Infrastructure Services Department. The report be referred back to the Waste Management Advisory Committee, and that the Waste Management Advisory Committee be directed to engage an academic professional
who has studied the implementation in other cities. And that the Waste Management Advisory Committee be directed to report back to council on its finding by April 20th, or by April 2021. And now Jay and then Ted. Sorry, I haven't got are you saying, sorry, you want to request to speak, Jay, or you want to move that?
Just kind of a change
Jay,
to what's.
Jay, do you want to speak to it, or do you want to move that motion?
I'd like to, I guess, speak to it, just if it's possible to change it before we move it.
Okay, just, okay. Ted, on process or on the wording of that motion?
Mayor Clark, again, before we move something, there is inherent in this motion, as it is currently worded, a retention of an external consultant. Does WEMAC have a budget for that, or do we have to allocate monies for that purpose? Because you don't get professional opinion if you don't pay for it.
Want to address that? No, I wasn't. Jay, do you want to address Ted's question?
Thanks. Through the chair, first of all, I think kind of the phrasing's a little unusual there. It should be kind of divided up. So I was asking for someone with an academic background on the subject and also someone from a city that has done this. And I think they've been combined together. In terms of who we'd call in or what type of compensation, I can work directly with Greg on that to see if we can see if there might be a possibility of bringing in a contact just to kind of volunteer their time or seeing what's possible. My understanding is that if necessary, WEMAC does have a budget dedicated for speakers, but hopefully we could find a situation where, we wouldn't have to do that. Often we'll bring in speakers that just, volunteer their time, that have a kind of a message to give. And so they find the time to do that. But yeah, I just thought that might be kind of a way around that. I don't know if that needs to be enshrined or not.
Okay, whatever the motion is, it's got to be deliverable. Ralph, I do see your hand. I'm just deciding where to go with this. Ralph, go ahead first.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will not be supporting Councillor Follis's motion. We have excellent staff, very professional staff. Mr. Preston has done an excellent job in looking at this and doing his research and everything else. I think it would be an insult to staff to bring somebody from outside that our staff has done an excellent job on this. So I will not be supporting the motion.
Just to be clear, the motion isn't on the floor yet, but and I quite agree that we have very capable and professional staff in a number of areas, and this is certainly one of them. Okay, let's put the wording of the motion back on the screen, please. And then Jay, if there's an alteration to that, then we'll do it now. But I'm going to start moving this forward to some sort of end result. So Jay, you said you had an issue with the wording?
Thanks. Through the chair, just if it could be broken up so that we go someone with an academic background on the subject, as well as also hearing from a representative of a city where this has been implemented. So two different people. And just a quick comment to Ralph's comment there. I would certainly not want to knock the expertise of any of our city staff. Just what I'm finding is a very complicated question that it kind of requires a very specific background in the subject. So that's why I'm requesting it. Certainly Greg's been a really helpful asset and wonderful resource as we're kind of going through this process.
So you're looking to engage two different individuals in the middle, in that middle statement. Sorry, can everybody hear me okay? Madam CA, I see that. No? Okay. Now my microphone says it's on. I'm not sure why they can. Oh, I see. Okay. All right. So we're going to go Madam CAO in a moment. But Greg, Race, Jay, so I understand it in that second phrase, you want to put two different individuals in there. I don't know how you're going to pay for it. I don't know how you're going to find them, but I think there needs to be some sort of assurance that that can happen, or I don't think we should be deliberating an undeliverable resolution. Madam CEO, if you wanted to weigh in, please.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I was just going to actually say essentially what you've said in that second paragraph needs to be clear so that it's all it's understood. WEMAC understands whether in fact we're commissioning the services of and to what degree, what's the scope and scale. So I think that at this point, Mr. Mayor, that second component or that second paragraph of the motion is very vague and needs to be clear.
All right. So right now, I do not have a motion on the floor. Again, I will encourage members of council ahead of time to nail down the wording with staff so that when we get to this situation that we have some clear direction, at least on which to adjudicate our discussion or have our discussion. I believe I had Rob in queue. Rob, you have a suggestion on this, and then I'm going to ask Jay for his definitive wording on this, and then I move it forward.
Thank you, Mayor Clark. I know you're trying to move this along. I'm not going to support this motion either. I don't think we need a professional to say what's the difference between an opaque garbage bag and a clear garbage bag. Mr. Preston has clearly defined what those things are. Currently now, residents put their garbage out in an opaque garbage bag or a clear garbage bag, and I think we just need to move along, Mr. Mayor. Thanks.
Okay, so Jay, you still need to amend the wording of the proposed resolution? Can I have what that wording is, please, definitively?
Sorry, could we just have the motion pop up on the screen there for a second, just so
Absolutely.
I can? Yeah,
absolutely.
So literally what I would say is, and that the Waste Management Advisory Committee be directed to engage an academic with a background in waste management, as well as a representative from a city where the clear garbage bag plan has been in place.
I do believe that's part of our benchmarking process that we do, but okay. Let me, before I go there, Tim, thank you. I've got you in queue. Before I go there, though, I want to know, you've heard the proposed resolution and with the change wording, is there a seconder for that to put it on the floor? Tim, you are the seconder? No, you're not a seconder. Is there a seconder to put that motion on the floor? Okay, then I'm going to ask for the very original motion that was in the report to appear on the floor, please. Or appear on the screen. Tim, on process, go right ahead.
Thanks, Mayor Clark. I was just going to suggest that I'm not sure why we need that second paragraph at all, why it just can't read, return to WEMAC for further discussion. That doesn't put any pressure on WEMAC because as it reads there, or if you put all this detail in there, the report may come back, couldn't find enough professional, couldn't afford an academic, thank you very much, right? So if you just put in that for further discussion and let the honorable member from Ward, where are you from? Ward 3?
3, yes.
Yeah, Ward 3, to make his argument with WEMAC about getting somebody into a volunteer, by the sounds of it, who is an academic or who is a professional to enter the discussion.
I'm doing my breathing. Okay. I'm going to suggest something then, Ted, I'll go to you before I do anything else. I did ask staff to put the original motion back on the screen. Tim, you've made a suggested wording change to Jay's amendment. I am fine to put that on the screen if that allows us to make a decision. So Ted, unless you've got an alternative direction, that's probably what I'm going to ask staff to do. Go ahead, Ted.
Mayor Clark, it was my intention to move the original motion.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Tim, sorry, I need to, right now looks like I've got a mover and a seconder for the original motion, and Ted and Ralph. But Tim, because of your conversation a few seconds before that, are you indicating that you will second Jay's motion if we get rid of that one clause?
Yes.
Okay, let's put that on the screen, please. Okay, this committee recommends the council that further the report EIS 2101 dated January 27, 2021 from the Environment and Infrastructure Services Department. The report be referred back to the Waste Management Advisory Committee, affectionately known as WMAC, and that the Waste Management Advisory Committee be directed to report back to council on its findings by April 2021. I believe I have a mover in Councillor Follis, a seconder in Councillor Lauer. Is there any further discussion? I will now call the question. I'll ask the motion. Everybody's seen the motion. You don't want it reread. I will now call the question. All in favor? That is defeated. Let's put the original motion back on the screen, please. But this committee recommends the council that is recommended in the report EIS 2103 dated January 27, 2021 from the Environment and Infrastructure Services Department, Chapter 877 of the City of Orillia Municipal Code, Solid Waste Management be amended as set out in Schedule A of the report effective February 7th, 2022. Is there a mover and a seconder to put that on the floor? Thank you, Robert. Thank you, Ted. And any further discussion? Councillor Lauer, then Councillor Emon, then Councillor Ainsworth.
Thank you, Mayor Clark. Just a quick question through to Greg. So you have a clear bag, and I'm not sure how most people do this, but a lot of people, coincidentally, we were discussing earlier, use plastic bags, which are not clear, from grocery stores in a smaller container, and then put it in a bigger bag or a pail. Does that affect the effectiveness of the system, or is that a minor concern?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the proposed bylaw amendment would allow people to put up to 2 of those bags within their clear plastic garbage bag period. So they'd be able to do that. Now, if they filled up their clear plastic bag with nothing but shopping, like filled up shopping bags, we would be able to potentially leave it behind, but I think that we'd leave it to the collection driver to make the call if he or she feels that the plastic shopping bags are full of cans or corn husks or things that should be going in the other programs. They could make the call to leave that behind. Again, we would not be leaving a lot of garbage behind. We'd just be going after the most apparent infractions. And the whole encouragement is, if you put it out in a clear plastic bag, you're going to want to divert as much of that from that bag as possible. So I hope that answers your question. If it doesn't, I'd be happy to answer.
Well, if I could just follow up, so that would mean that if you were a law-abiding citizen like myself, you would, from this point on, have to buy smaller clear bags to comply, right?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the idea is you'd buy a regular size, garbage bag size clear bag for everything. Right now, you could have up to 2 privacy bags. They could be opaque shopping bags. They could be, I guess you could say, kitchen garbage bags that people sometimes buy as well. And that's what you could use to hide things in there, like if people didn't want other people to see hygiene products or things like that, you could hide them within those privacy bags. Does that answer your question?
No, what I'm saying is, I would be expected though to buy clear smaller bags, because I mean, if I can only put 2 in, right?
I see what you're saying. Yes. Yeah, you could either do that, or you could empty your bag into your clear bag. Yeah. So you, but yeah, that would be a good point. Yeah.
Okay,
Thank you very much. I have Ted, Mason, and Pat.
Thank you. My question, Mayor Clark, is very similar to Councillor Lauer's, to just say that we treat garbage or waste at the point of making the waste. So we direct recyclables into the recycling thing, organics into the organic, and we have under our kitchen sink where we would put the non-recyclable, non-organics. And it works out that we probably fill that about once a week. And it's in a kitchen catcher bag that we buy in bulk. They are not clear because they are not available as clear bags, by the way, for kitchen catcher size bags. We then put that in our garbage can with the lid on it. And when we have it full, which recently we've only been putting it out every other week or every other collection, like once a month, what we're finding is that I put a tag on the top and they take that. This would suggest that I can't do that because there would probably be more than 2 of those in there. So I'd either have to put it out every week, or as you're suggesting, I'd have to put a clear bag in, empty it in, and then I'd throw the dirty bags in on top. So we'd be doubling up on the plastic that's going into the landfill site. So my sense is that I'm totally in support of the program, and I fully understand that what we're trying to do is to target that 20% of the 80% of the folks who aren't following the rules reasonably well. But it will be a burden for a number of us, and I would suggest that in my neighborhood, that seems to be the pattern that many of my neighbors are using. And so I would like you to lobby on behalf of us to have our grocery and other stores carry clear kitchen catcher bags, because I'd be happy to use them. But until that's available, and we've got a year to get ready for this. So that's simply the, it's a mechanical logistics issue. It's not an intention issue. So.
And what do we do before bags? I have Mason. Thank you. Go ahead, Mason. I got you, Jay.
Sure. Through you, Mayor Clark, happy to support this moving forward. I think, as Councillor Raymond has mentioned, sometimes these things are a little bit difficult, but the reality is this is the right decision, and it's the right financial decision. It's going to save us a considerable amount of money in the future. Just to simplify it for folks, the less waste we put in our landfill means that we have our landfill open for a longer period of time. And if you look into the finances, or if Greg wants to talk to that, it costs a ton of money to close and to cap a landfill. And in regards to when it is full eventually, which is hopefully, never, because I'd like to get us down to zero waste, so we're actually not throwing out garbage. I think that would be ideal for the city. I know that there's many people in our community who literally don't put out any garbage throughout the entire year because they, buy products they need, and then they don't buy some other things that might cause it to become garbage. But then on Councillor Heen's points, there are lots of folks who do have pets or have hygiene products or have diapers that need to throw those things out. So it's we have quite a mix within the city, but at the end of the day, what we want to do is reduce as much waste as we can. And we see that there's really low hanging fruit, as Greg might add, which is people who are literally just not putting out any recycling or compost. They just take all of their stuff and they put it in the garbage. And this is what we're trying to avoid by making it a little bit more difficult and a little bit easier for our staff to see these things, so that we can say them to the people and say, hey, we noticed that you're putting out all of your recycling into your garbage. Well, here's some information, and here's how you can do that a little bit better so that you're actually separating out some of those items and teach people more about it. Because in the end, at the end of the day, it's saving them money in the long run. Thanks.
Mason, thanks for that. The only thing I would take you to task on is you want to make sure that low-hanging fruit is put in the organics. Bad joke.
Thank you. Steve, what people used to do is have a dump in their backyard. When we had put our addition on, we dug things up like old bottles and stuff. So I guess that's what they did before bags. My question to Greg, can we still put those clear plastic bags in a garbage can? Or do we have to just have the clear plastic bags?
Excellent. Through you, Mr. Chair. Through you, Mr. Mayor, excellent question. Yeah, residents would still be allowed to use rigid containers. However, if they line their rigid container, they'd need to use a clear plastic bag just to obviously to incorporate the intention of the revised bylaw. But yes, they can definitely still use rigid containers. Residents, for example, that have sanitary products that they don't want their neighbors to see, they can use those they can use rigid containers, and they don't even have to put a garbage tag on that either. I mean, that's another benefit that residents can take advantage of even right now, of putting sanitary products. And what I mean is like diapers, even adult diapers, in a rigid container or in a clear plastic bag within a rigid container. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And as promised, Jay.
Thanks. Apologies, Steve, there. I didn't know if you had me or not. Just a quick comment there. Although I think there's certainly some information that we could get a bit more of, I am inclined to support this because I think the best information we have does suggest that we are able to divert a significant amount as a result. There were two questions I had for Greg. One was, I know Markham cited, is it 11% that's been diverted? Do we have any other municipality stats? Like, do we know of what Guelph's was or anything like that? The second question was, in terms of the federal government's new ban on plastics, we talked earlier today about this. Were we able to determine whether virgin plastics was in the being considered as one of the potential bans? If it were, not necessarily is or not, but if it were, how would this be impacted? Would we have to kind of come back to the table, or just if you could provide some information there? Thanks, Greg. Great.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Pallas. So I'll answer your second question first. Yes, we certainly I've looked at the federal government's discussion paper, and they are not recommending at this point banning garbage bags. It is noted in the discussion paper, but their focus is more on carry-out bags of plastic shopping bags. That's really their focus at this time. But that's not to say they might not look at banning it in the future. And if that were the case, we'd have to understand what the rules and regulations were. So if they're saying thou shall have recycled content within your clear plastic bags, then we would certainly have to consider that. What we would have to accept or work towards is the fact that those bags aren't going to be as transparent as a clear plastic bag. So it might present some challenges, but I'm sure it would still be better than a completely black or green garbage bag that the collection drivers can't see into at all. So no, great question there. Get to your first question now on what municipalities typically see. I don't have exact numbers for each of the four. Well, I have the exact number for Markham, which is 11%, like you said. But for the other three municipalities, I don't have an exact number. But when the Continuous Improvement Fund prepared a report on implementing clear plastic bag programs for garbage, they have indicated that generally you see a 10% increase in diversion. That's not going to be the way it always is, but it's a pretty good estimate from what they've seen there. So that's where that fact came from. Thank you.
Thank you both for that. Ralph, go right ahead. And then I'm going to wrap this up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I too will support the motion as it is, but a question for Mr. Preston. A little while back, Greg, I forget whether it's Norway or Sweden, they don't use any plastic bags at all for garbage. What they do is they have these containers, and the collector has forklifts. They go by your driveway, they pick it up, dump it, they rinse the garbage can automatically and everything else. And I know that I think you looked at it and it wasn't available at the time in Canada or in Orillia or anywhere. So I'm wondering if any progress has been done to what, I'm sure it was Norway or Switzerland, one of them, that does this in Europe. And Europe is starting to go that route. More and more of the countries are doing it.
Through Mr. Mayor, so what you're talking about, Councillor Cipolla, is a cart-based collection program. And there's a number of jurisdictions implementing cart-based programs. The main benefit of a cart-based collection program is you don't have a collection driver actually manually emptying garbage or recycling or green bin material into a collection truck. So you're helping with minimizing injuries and things like that. One of the drawbacks of a cart-based program is you can't easily see what's in the cart unless the driver gets out and looks in the cart to see that, yeah, the resident is participating in the diversion programs. But I'm sure there are ways they rectify that. If they're only seeing a garbage cart going out, maybe they're looking at that. I can't say for sure, but that's one of the drawbacks of it. A cart-based program is expensive, but you would look at other factors like, can you reduce your collection frequency by doing a cart-based program? For our intents and purposes here, we're trying to increase, or I guess, yeah, increase diversion from landfill here. So that was the focus of this program at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If I may, it is worth looking at, because I understand that both quite a few of the European cities are going that way, and they've eliminated quite a bit of their garbage.
Only if they have clear carts. Thanks for that, Greg. We'll put the resolution back on the screen in a second. I just want to say, Greg, thanks for that report. In the last 3 reports, certainly I was harassing you long before I came to the mayor's chair a number of years ago, just looking for ways to divert things from the waste stream of my business. And you've always been wonderfully helpful. And I think it's wonderful that we have somebody so passionate, so knowledgeable, and with your ability. So I just want to say thank you for those reports and your continued work. I'll ask staff now to put the resolution back on the screen. And we have a mover and a seconder. Oh, that's it right here. Thank you. Yeah, I think it was by Councillor Clisser and Councillor Heeman. That's right there. I won't read it again unless somebody requires that. And the last call for discussion. I'll now call the question. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. All right. Now, I know you need to normally click pause and then re-record. Do you need to do that right now? Okay. Just going to take 30 seconds. Don't go anywhere, and allow Madam Deputy Clerk to do that so that we have a public record of the meeting. And then we'll reconvene and go through the acquiring motions.
This conference is no longer being recorded. This conference will now be recorded.
I don't think we used up all the allotted 30 seconds. We're back at it, and thank you, Madam Deputy Clerk, for that. We have 2 inquiry motions, one with respect to, oh, sorry, no, we have, before we get to the inquiry motion, sorry, yeah, we do have ERTF and a very meaningful resolution, proposed resolution. And who's introducing us, Laura or Ted? Councillor Iman, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Clark. I will do a brief introduction, and Laura can answer all the questions because she knows what we're talking about. The ERTF, as council knows, has been now operating since the pandemic began in early April with the mandate of assisting local businesses to cope with the restrictions that are in place and the consequences of the pandemic, and also to assist as we recover from the pandemic and move forward. During wave one, we came up with a number of initiatives to assist, and council supported those initially by allocating $1 million for support. And then from that amount, we asked for a block of money that could be used for those initiatives that would be authorized for release by the Emergency Management Committee upon submission of a initiative proposal from the RTF. We have basically utilized all of those funds. There's a small amount left, and Laura can speak to that. But we are entering now in phase two, and we're beginning to recognize that there is need for us to intervene again. We have a fairly major initiative that we want to launch in reminding people that there are still restrictions and that they need to do the things to continue to make themselves safe until the vaccine is available and rolled out. We also want to thank people for all the hard effort that they've put into, and in our community particularly, of following the rules, and we've been reasonably successful in that. So we want to launch that program very soon. We discussed today in our meeting and are launching actually this week with the support, when we get the support of the Emergency Management Committee, a quick initiative to assist our local businesses to apply for the 10,000 to 20,000 small business support grant that the province is making available for a variety of reasons. There's a disproportionately low number of our businesses that have applied for this grant. It's a very simple grant to apply for. It takes less than 15 minutes to do the application. It's the requirements are relatively simple, and the turnaround time is within 2 weeks. And it is a grant. It's not a loan. So we're going to have a blitz on that, a bit of a challenge to our community to catch up to our neighbors and see if we can put some money into the economy. Again, this will require some money. We're also looking forward that as the vaccine starts to roll out, we expect this spring and summer that the economy, that the restrictions will be eased, and that we will need to do a number of things to boost up the economy in Orillia and our small businesses to return to prosperity. And so we expect a number of initiatives to go forward. This request is purely and simply to ask council to once again release a block of funding, $60,000, that we can count on to use again with the concurrence of the Emergency Management Committee, having reviewed our initiatives proposal, and speed the actions of the emergency or the Economic Recovery Task Force. I would like to that's the ask that we're putting forward, and I'd be happy to move the motion. And as I said, Laura, I'd be more than happy to answer the questions. But before we do that, I do want to thank Councillor Spola, Councillor Campbell for their hard efforts on behalf of the task force, but also all of the members of the task force, the citizen members and the members of our partner agencies. They have worked very, very hard, and many of the individuals are working on subgroups or working groups within the task force to develop these initiatives and to develop the means for their implementation. And your city, our city owes all of these folks a major thanks for the effort that they have been putting forward on behalf of our business community and the economy of Orillia. We're looking forward to continuing to do that for the next, hopefully, no more than 6 months, please.
We'll hold you to that. Here's one of those hard workers right here.
I will note.
Laura, welcome to the virtual hood. Did you have anything to add to that?
No, I think that was a great summary, but I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Great, thank you. If okay, I will ask for the motion to appear on the screen. If that's okay, Ralph. And then if there's a mover and a seconder. And this committee recommends to council that as recommended in the report ERTF 2101 dated January 27th, 2021 from the Economic Recovery Task Force, the allocation of $60,000 be authorized from the Social Assistance and Economic Recovery COVID-19 Emergency Relief Fund that council authorized last March to the Economic Recovery Task Force, subject to use these funds being approved by the City of Orillia Emergency Management Committee for Economic Recovery Projects, which align with the Economic Recovery Task Force's mandate. I believe, Councillor Eamon, you were the mover, and Councillor Campbell, you're a seconder. Okay. And any further discussion or questions for Councillor Eamon or Councillor Campbell or Councillor Spolo or Laura Thompson? I'll go to Rob and then Jay.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. Just a question regarding what's money's left in the budget of the $1 million we spent. I know we've been using some of that money through other certain projects throughout the city. I don't know if we have an answer for that.
Somebody from the RTF or the Treasury Department available to give us an idea of the balance of that particular fund?
Through you, Mayor Clark, I can advise that the Treasury Department estimates that there's approximately 900,000 remaining in that Social Assistance and Economic Recovery Emergency Relief Fund.
Thank you, through you, Mayor Clark. Thanks, Ms. Thompson.
Thank you very much. I now have Jay and then Ralph.
Thanks. Through the chair, I just had a question to Ted. I was curious if the ERTF had explored like online efforts, and just if you could speak to that in terms of providing business access to online advertising or online services. I just know there's other communities throughout Canada that have kind of gone in that direction. I was curious if you guys had explored that. I know there is a Shop Orillia website in town, so that's something that's already there. But just, yeah, if you could expand on that, that'd be greatly appreciated. Thanks.
I believe that's been one of their main initiatives, but Councillor Eamon.
Mayor Clark, if I may, I'd like to direct that to Laura, who can speak specifically about the programming we've been doing in the digital field.
Thank you. So you'll recall within our phase 1 initiatives that the task force undertook, we did compile a project called the Orillia Online Initiative. Our focus in that was, it was very early on in the pandemic, and we wanted to make sure that businesses were able to pivot to online sales where possible and or curbside pickup. So we did launch an initiative that included many components, but a few components of that were connecting businesses with the Downtown Orillia Management Board Digital Main Street program. So that helps connect people with one-on-one support to get them online and get them set up with an e-commerce presence. We also included funding of a workshop through the CDC. So it was all about getting your business online. I think that's actually what it was called. And it was a series of workshops to help businesses get online. They had a successful run of that program, and we were able to actually help them offer a second run of the program. In addition to that, we also supported initiatives like the Shop Orillia website, and we launched a survey at the end of our Orillia online campaign to make sure that everybody was well taken care of and online. And overall, people were very happy with the support and felt that they didn't require any further support.
That's great. Yes, and thanks for your efforts around that. I know it's really transformed the way a lot of places did business. I believe I had Councillor Spolo. Go ahead, Ralph.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, I just want to thank the leadership that Ted has provided, and a special thank you to staff like Laura and Dan and Michael. Without them, we wouldn't have. They've helped tremendously the economic benefits to our community to make it better and increase keep some retailers alive. So just a special thanks to all of them. And secondly, I think we really have a job to do within the next 6 months. And this is where this $60,000 would help tremendously to get some programs going so that we can bring the economy back and rebounds back in a proper manner. And like I said, we have a lot of work to do, and a special thanks to Ted for his leadership and that. So, but we definitely need this money to enhance the economic development of our community.
Thank you very much. Any other questions or comments? I will now call the question. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Thank you, Laura. Thank you, Ted. Okay, we are now on to the aforementioned inquiries. The first one is brought to you by Councillor Cipolla with respect to the feasibility of increasing funding for tree planting. And Councillor Cipolla, do you wish to speak to that?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think staff is really busy with this COVID-19, and what I'd like to do is ask our CAO or Megan or Christine how to deal with this, because I'd really like it to go to budget for the 2022 budget when we go back sometime in August when we deal with the budget for 2022. I think it's really important because a lot of us are getting a lot of questions about the cost, and I think the city should come up with more funding somehow, whether it's through provincial grants or municipal or county grants or something, and then maybe add some of our own money to increase the funding for tree planting. Our tree canopy is really important to the climate change. So I think we really need to do our homework, and hopefully we can recommend this to 2021 budget negotiations for 2022. So maybe the CAO can enlighten me whether this motion can go that way, or because I know staff has got a lot of important things to do rather than deal with this at this time.
Thank you for that. Yes, our trees are an amazing asset. To your point, though, Councillor Cipolla, if I heard you correctly, you'd like this to be discussed and thought about it, but you don't want to burden staff necessarily at the moment. So I would ask Madam CAO to say there is an inquiry motion that would come back on an extended time period, or what direction would we take? Madam CAO?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, what I would recommend is that if the motion is put and passed by council, what I'm to understand is there's no immediate urgency to have that report in the next couple of months, but what we would do is have that report so you have all of the information that you would need prior to making any budget decisions. So I think, Mayor Clark, I would just let the motion stand. Staff will add it to the list of things to do and report back, but without a sense of urgency at this point, but recognizing that you would want something for 2022 budget.
I'd be happy to
do that. Before I put that on the screen, Tim, did you wish to speak about a potential alternate direction?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Clark. This issue is being discussed currently at the EAC and has been for the last 2 or 3 years. We are in fact responsible for the budget that currently exists, which is, I believe, around $25,000, which Public Works spends in consultation with the EAC. So if you're looking for an easy way to handle this, I would just suggest that Councillor Cipolla attend the next EAC meeting. I believe we're having staff reporting on some tree issues at that particular time. Certainly the tree bylaw will be discussed. But I think this is the kind of thing that's already in the works. This is what the EAC does. And So I'm not sure we need to get staff to do it twice. So I would suggest simply withdraw the inquiry, come to the next DAC meeting, and you'd be more than welcome.
Okay, thank you. I do have Ralph, you'd like to have a motion on the screen, or are you happy with that suggestion?
Whatever pleases council, Mr. Mayor. Like I said, I didn't want this to be a burden on staff. I just want to make sure that it's in the 2021 budget. When we go to negotiations for 2022 budget, to increase our funding that way. And I don't think the EAC has the authority to increase their budget without the appropriate authority from council. So that's why I wanted to see it go on the 2022 budget.
So to be clear,
I will,
sorry, go ahead.
no, I will bow to experience.
Well, so the EAC comes up with some wonderful ideas, but you're right, they would have to be resourced to council. So either way, it's going to come back to council for deliberation at some point. So what I've heard is that you're amenable to doing either or. If you still want the motion to go on the floor, we can put it on the floor right now. And EAC can certainly have the input on that inquiry motion when it comes forward later on. Or you can go and maybe go to the EAC meeting, see what it's like, and if you feel satisfied that your desired direction is being taken care of there, will come to council and maybe your input there, then you can be satisfied with that, or then you can bring your inquiry motion forward at that point. So if are you okay to do that?
Yeah, I'm okay to do that as long as Councillor Lauer sends me an invitation to the EAC meeting through Zoom.
They'll give you the secret handshake to get into that meeting. Okay, so if that's okay, then we won't put that on the floor for now. And if Ralph, if you desire to bring it back on the floor after your meeting at EAC, then so be it. Yeah, I believe, and that's, yeah, I'm not hearing anything different from any other member of council at the moment. Okay, now we're going a second inquiry motion. Councillor Eamon, you're up again with respect to what I would call an idea of vetting process, but I'll let you take the lead. Sorry, speak this, please.
Thank you, Mayor Clark. Yes. Let me just set the stage for this, and so that my colleagues understand from whence I'm coming on this. Over the last 6 months or so, a number of individuals have approached the city. Some have approached the mayor's office. Some have approached me. One came through the Economic Recovery Task Force with suggestions about economic development initiatives that our city could undertake. Now, these are initiatives that are outside the program that our economic development department is currently pursuing, and do not overlap with them, but would require to some degree City of Orillia support. In some cases, they might require a significant financial commitment from the city. In others, they might just require more informal support and maybe the good work of the mayor's office in helping to move these forward. All of them have potential. All of them are at a different stage of thinking, a different stage of evolution. And what this inquiry is intended to work with staff to develop a process and a set of criteria that will enable those folks who are interested in putting forward a suggestion like this to have some guidelines about what would be useful for them to consider and have in their proposal, and would provide a mechanism to evaluate that proposal against a set of criteria before a recommendation comes to council. So council would be informed and have the ultimate decision, obviously, of whether we would support something or not, but at least would the initiative would come with a report that would be in a form and in the degree of detail that would be useful to council and make that decision. And for those of you who were for those of us on the last council, you recall that when the Orillia Cultural Center came to our table, they had what we thought was a very good idea, but it was just an idea, and it had not been formed in an initiative proposal, and yet we supported it, but for a variety of reasons, it didn't come about. And I believe that it would have been useful if we'd had this kind of a mechanism in place. We could have been much more valuable to them in guiding them in terms of how they might want to cast their development. I don't want to speak about the specifics of those that have come forward at this point because they are all in a stage of development, and I don't have the permission of the sponsors to do that because I think it's premature for them to become public. But I could suggest that one idea came forward this week, which was raised, which is a very interesting one because it's an idea coming out of the pandemic. And it's the idea that has emerged in 5 communities in the United States that recognize that there are a large number of individuals who will probably continue to work from home after the pandemic has occurred. And that these people represent a demographic in our society which tends to be younger, more mobile, more interested in ensuring that when they have an opportunity to work at home, there are others within the community that they can associate with. And 5 communities in the United States are working with real estate developers to actually build a residential enclave in those communities that will have the amenities and the both technical amenities, but also the social and environmental amenities that this group, primarily millennials, would find attractive. And there is some interest in Orillia potentially having something of this nature. This kind of a process that we're talking about in criteria would be an ideal vehicle to bring that idea to, so that it could be more the rigor that is needed to bring it to the council would be put in place before it comes just as a good idea to the mayor's office or however. So that's the intention. Whether the process or whether is an internal one or an external one or how that is, that's the intention of having our staff spend some time thinking about this. So I would like to put the motion on the table and be happy to move it. If there's a seconder, I would welcome the discussion.
Okay, looks like you've got 5 seconders. So we'll put the motion on the screen. Thank you very much, Christine. This committee recommends the council that staff be directed to prepare a report with respect to the following: the feasibility of developing a strategic initiative / business development decision matrix that would help guide council in deliberating on proposed community, economic, and/or business development initiatives. And that's moved by Ted and seconded by Ralph, I believe. And any further discussion? Jay and then Tim.
Thanks. Through the chair to Ted, I'm a little need some clarity on this particular inquiry here. So can you maybe walk us through just can you give us an example of what this would do and how it's different from what we've got right now? Like for you mentioned the HCC group. Can you kind of elaborate on, okay, walk us through that process. What would that look like if we had this type of initiative in place?
Go ahead, Ted. I wouldn't mind weighing in on that answer when you're done.
Okay, let me start because on it, and then I'll welcome others' opinion. When the HCC came to us, it was an idea that got to the council table. And we as councillors said, hey, do you think this is a good idea or not? And we did think it was a good idea. And we decided to support them. And over a year or so, in fact, we supported them twice. But we weren't clear, and they weren't clear about what was necessary to take an initiative of this nature and bring it to a conclusion. And so I think that we could develop some criteria in terms of who's involved in it, criteria about a business plan, criteria about the financial feasibility of this, criteria about what is necessary. In that particular case, it would be provincial government needed to be involved, and so on and so forth. And I think it would have been helpful if council had had the input of this process in order to help us make our decision. The other thing is that within the last 6 months, there have been 6 of these initiatives that have been raised, as I say, well, let me put it this way, at the mayor's office. And we have no ability as a community to pursue 6 initiatives in addition to the economic development activity we're already doing. So having a mechanism like this would enable periodically those kinds of initiatives to run through a process that would enable council to say there is greater potential for initiative A as opposed to initiative C, and that would be an input into our decision making. So it's purely a matter of doing that kind of stuff.
If I could add to that, Jay, and Ted's quite right. I believe there are a couple of meaningful reasons for considering this. One is when a project comes to us, even when we don't have a lot of other initiatives at that particular moment, I think it would be helpful for council to know that it meets a minimum threshold, whether that's return on financial investment, return on quality of life investment, whether it ticks off the boxes on our strategic plan or has a solid business plan behind it. And that kind of information would help, I think, council make a decision. And that's number one, if it was a plan by itself. But what was clearly illuminated to me as mayor in the last few months was we had some wonderful ideas come forward. And when I got to about the 4th idea or 5th project, my head started spinning a little bit. How do we deal with this? I mean, they're potentially wonderful projects, but competing with each other on top of, as Ted said, on top of the things we have going on in business development and communications now. And my fear was that if we took on 2 or 3 of these, maybe even 1, depending on when it was, we would be spreading resources too thinly, either financial or staff, or even volunteer base. So I strongly believe that we need a process that allows us to prioritize based on what we see the value system of the city and the councils and our available resources. So it really is something as simple as a vetting process that allows individual ideas to tick enough boxes to give council confidence to move it forward, or if we've got competing project ideas as stacking them up against each other and say, okay, with limited resources, where do we concentrate for the next 6 months or a year? And I hope that's clear. But I saw your sign back up, Jay, so go right ahead if you wish.
I do appreciate kind of the ability to ask again. So you're kind of mentioning some certain situations that were coming up, both Steve and Ted. Can we get a bit more clarity on like those examples? Like, just so it just seems very like we're kind of talking in vague terms. That's all.
Well, I think it's premature to speak really about some of those ideas. They may still happen, but and they may not. But really doesn't matter what the projects are. It really is the fact that we had a number of significant competing ideas, and we just needed a vetting process for it. But again, nothing to hold back. But it's really individuals of the community that have brought the ideas forward. So I think I would rather have their permission before we disclose those.
If I may, Mayor Clark, I might, I'm not going to give specifics, Jay, because this happens all the time that people typically approach the mayor's office in confidence saying, would Orillia be interested in this idea, or would you be interested in this idea? And discussions take place, but they would be concerned if that was to be made public before they got to the point where they have fully formed what they want to propose. And I think that happens all the time within any city. And it just means that we would have a more formal process for guiding that. But I one good example I think that I can relate to is sustainability Orillia. They have about, last count, I think it was 35 or 40 goals that they would like to implement over the next little while. Well, some of them are relatively independent, and they can do that as an agency, but some are going to require the city to be actively involved in, either financially or our staff to be involved. And so the risk reward for the city of our being involved in those things would be, it would be best if council understood that, and that we help the Sustainability Orillia to pick the 1, 2, or 3 things that they really want our help on over the next couple of years to come to the table with the plan put together. That would be one place where I think this process would be a distinct aid in terms of guiding how groups like that work. But it's like any developer who comes to your community and says, I'm thinking, I'd like to build I'm thinking of locating a new facility in Orillia. We have typically a number of discussions with those kinds of folks before it gets to the public realm, just so we know, just so that we don't divulge stuff that's happening before it should be divulged.
Tim, I believe I have you patiently in queue. At least patiently on the outside.
I'll be supporting this, but not because I agree with it, but because I agree with the idea of people having inquiries and getting answers to their questions and exploring new ideas. But my experience with new ideas is if they hadn't been exposed to any kind of metric at all, they would have died an early death. And I think there's some ideas come forward and they take a little bit of faith, and they need to move forward. And the idea of arguing against a matrix, I don't think is going to work eventually. I could see having something in place where perhaps people are given advice on what they might need before they did come to council, or before they did make a proposal, or before they did carry their idea further down the road. But the idea of some sort of formulaic response to great ideas, I think is dangerous. I really think you gotta, I know you referenced the Huronia grounds project, but those same people built a university, right? And that they wouldn't have passed the matrix when they first came to anywhere near the city at that time. And the Huronia issue was completely out of their hands. And I think probably the lack of movement on the province in that case surprised a lot of people. So I like I say, I'm certainly more than interested to look at what kind of product or result, or what, I guess we're only asking about the feasibility of developing a strategic initiative. So I guess that's the first step, but I'll be very wary of attaching formulas to great ideas.
Yeah, certainly I understand that, Tim, and that maybe not to the extent that you are aware of it, but I didn't see the significant need for this up until the last few months. So the scenario that was presented that came clear to me over a few weeks was we had 4 or 5 significant potential projects, and there was no way, there was absolutely no way that this city could be significantly involved in all of those. So I do believe there needs to be some way of prioritizing, and even if they're if there are ideas that may be the most wonderful ideas, and I also believe that if the guys had come forward with the university idea, which they didn't do it, it would probably tick off a lot of the boxes, depending on the criteria put that. But anyway, I do appreciate your comments, and as you say, that's probably where I was a few months ago. But the need for a system or process has been illuminated to me in my office, at least. Okay, any further questions, comments, discussion? I believe I have a mover and a seconder. Thank you. I will now call the question on the inquiry motion. All in favor? Sorry, Pat, did you? Thank you. You want to make a comment, or?
I just wasn't sure if by doing this, we were going to thwart a lot of dreams that had the potential to come true.
Well, my belief is that this may help a lot of the dreams move forward. That is my belief. But anyway, this is just a preliminary process to not to thwart or to move anything forward. It's just an inquiry for a report on what a process could look like, and then you can decide whether it has the ability to kill it or to enhance it. But I did call the vote, and I'll probably let the vote stand. But if anybody has a comment just to wrap this up with, go ahead.
I might just, in response to Pat's comment, one idea that had been talked about that might be incorporated into this process is, in fact, an annual solicitation of ideas from our community, so that people, just like we do with the downtown CIP program, is to come out and say, if you have something that you're interested in seeing our city pursue, here are find the framework that you need to frame that in so that it could get into the process. So I think it would actually encourage ideas to come forward from those people who at the moment are not sure how they would even put the idea on the table.
Thank you for that. And I will now go to announcements. Oh, sorry. Sorry, I was being asked by staff if that vote had carried. It indeed carried. I just didn't say that, so I apologize for not saying that. And I believe, Rob, you had an announcement.
Yes, thank you through you, Mayor Clark. I just want to put a shout out to all of our daycare providers who are taking care of our frontline workers' children, as there's still lots of people leaving and going to work out of the house every day. And I just think they're all doing a really good job. Thanks so much.
Thank you for that. Any other announcements? If I could just add to Rob's comment, the hospital board meeting last week was a strong illustration to me of what a lot of our frontline workers in the community, and certainly our healthcare workers, and what they have gone through in the last 11 months. And now that they are now running Roberta House in Barrie, and which it's hard to imagine what that looks like inside with so many positive cases and so many mortalities, and yet the staff show up every day and are professional and enduring, and my heart goes out to them, and certainly my gratitude goes out to them, and I'm sure it does on behalf of all of council. And the variant that is from the UK that is now in Roberta House, and we're trying to discern to the degree that it might be in the community. It's just a reminder to myself and the EMC, and I'm sure to you, that the next few weeks are absolutely critical. I know that we keep hearing this, but with that variant, that is a potential negative game changer. The virulence with which it spreads is just, was unthinkable, I think, when COVID first sprung on us. So we'll just implore people to abide by the stay-at-home order and put measures in place and stay safe, because this is potentially a very new and ugly game. Having said that, I hopefully will find time tomorrow night to go home and put on Bill Murray and Andy McDowell in Groundhog Day, because tomorrow is Groundhog Day, and because of the COVID pandemic, every day feels like a little bit like Groundhog Day. Madam Deputy Clerk, are we aware of anybody lined up for open public forum? Okay, that's fine. And now I will entertain a motion to adjourn. I love that, Mason. I look your direction every time on that one. And moved by Mason and seconded by Rob. All in favor? Thanks, gang. Stay safe.
Thanks, Steve.